Good afternoon, and thanks so much for joining us for 12 News at 4. I'm Tram Mai.
And I'm Troy Hayden. Today was the first day of testimony in the Lori Vallow Daybell trial here in Arizona. This trial focuses on Vallow Daybell's fourth husband, Charles Vallow, who was shot and killed back in 2019 by Lori's brother, Alex Cox. Now, Cox admitted to police he pulled the trigger, but said it was self-defense at the time. And he was never charged with the crime. He died later that same year, reportedly of natural causes.
Investigators believe Lori and her brother Alex conspired with each other to have her husband Charles killed. Jurors will have to decide if it was in fact Lori's intention to encourage or aid in first-degree murder, and that she or her brother Alex planned to carry it out.
12 News journalist Rachel Cole is here with the very latest on what happened in the courtroom this morning. Hello, Rachel.
Good afternoon. Opening statements started around 11 o'clock this morning. Lori Vallow Daybell sharing her side just 2 hours ago, giving her opening statements for about 15 minutes, really honing in on the heartache she said her family has endured, saying this was not a murder for money, it was a family tragedy.
The state has mentioned they're alleging that insurance money was my motive. Social Security was my motive. Spouses having insurance policies is not a crime. Collecting Social Security is not a crime. Self-defense is not a crime. A family tragedy is not a crime. It's a tragedy. Thank you.
Meantime, the prosecutor, Trina Kay, however, says the facts and hard evidence will show that Lori and her brother, Alex, planned the killing together, and said Lori did have a motive and it was money.
As we go through this trial, you will see photos of Charles's injury, photos of the crime scene, and hear testimony that will prove that this was not self-defense. As we go through this trial, you'll be provided with phone calls, emails, text messages, and hear testimony that lays out the motive for this murder: money and Chad Daybell.
The officers who responded to that shooting on the day back in July 2019 then took the stand. Vallow Daybell seemed to focus on one issue, that police did not press charges for 2 years after Charles was killed. Still, the prosecution believes they have a strong case that this was a planned murder and not self-defense. Tram and Troy.
All right, Rachel, thank you. So let's take a legal deep dive on day one. Attorney Kurt Altman of Altman Law and Policy is here. All right, out of the gate, first impressions. What did you think of how Lori presented herself with her opening statement as well as her line of questioning? What'd you think?
I actually, was more impressed than I thought I would be. She seemed very professional, very prepared, and went forward. To me, it looked like she studied. She learned what she needed to do to act like a lawyer and represent herself, and she laid out her case, basically. It wasn't too bad.
And she talked a lot about her two children. Is the jury going to hear that she's been convicted of murdering those two young children?
Well, that's going to be a tough one because this took place before those murders, correct? So that's going to be up to the judge. That's called a prior bad act, even though it happened afterwards, and it's a really bad act. Certainly the prosecution is going to want to get into that because she put those two children as main witnesses to her defense. But that's going to be a decision the judge has to make, maybe has already made. Often that's done in pretrial, but we'll see. It'll be exciting.
There was a point where there was the first witness, and Lori actually made an objection to the prosecution. That was interesting to you. Tell me why.
Yeah, it was. I think the prosecution asked the initial officer about something else he may have seen in the house, clearly looking for an answer that he didn't remember. And she said something along the lines like, didn't you see a live round or a round or an expended shell or something like that? And Lori went, objection leading. Arguably, that's a leading question. It's not going to matter in the long run. It's going to come in, but she clearly has worked on her legal skills to represent herself in this case.
So she's been convicted up in Idaho along with her current husband of murdering the two children. She's serving a life sentence. I've had comments from people saying, why are we spending the time and money to try these cases down here? What would you say to them?
Well, one, every victim has the right to justice, right? It's a different jurisdiction, different state. But what this case also does, if she gets convicted here, it'll preserve that conviction in Idaho. That case is on appeal. Both of them, I'm sure, have appealed. There's all kinds of things. It's going to go on in the appellate courts for a long time. If something were to happen up there and she's still convicted here, it just kind of secures that and preserves them, those convictions in the long run.
What do you think her strategy will be?
I mean, it sounds like her strategy is self-defense. She really laid it out in her opening statement saying, hey, my daughter was in danger. The victim was going to hit my daughter with a bat, and we came to her aid. So it's clearly, if that were the case, it would be self-defense. The problem is, as Troy said, those witnesses are gone.
Right.
At her hand, she's been convicted of that. So it'll be difficult, I think, in her case to actually get that evidence out.
You know, they said a person who represents themselves in court has a fool for a lawyer, right? What do you think is behind this? Is this really hurting her to represent herself here?
It's never a good idea. I mean, it's never a good idea. She's not trained. Certainly she has the right, but she has trained lawyers that could represent her and do it the best way legally. So no, it's not a good idea. It's going to hurt her in the long run, but I think what's behind it is just her ego and yeah, her ego. I mean, she likes the show, and I think that's what she's doing here.
But when she's representing herself, or really anybody, but obviously in this particular case, is she getting any kind of legal advice or some kind of consultant or what have you, just to kind of help a little bit?
Well, certainly she'll have an investigator assigned that'll help her get evidence and things like that. And she has, I think, 2 lawyers sitting with her that they call standby counsel,
right,
advisory counsel, that they're not really supposed to give her legal advice because she's representing herself, but they are there to help her, to assist her in communications with the prosecution and things like that. But overall, she's supposed to do it on her own once they waive that right to having a lawyer.
Kurt Altman, thank you very much. Altman Law and Policy. It was a good appearance and taught us a few things, I think.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Informative.
Thank you so
Kurt.
much.
So we'll have continuing coverage of Lori Vallow Daybell's trial on air and online. We'll be live streaming the entire trial, gavel to gavel, and we're doing that exclusively on our 12 Plus app. That's our app for your television. So we will also have daily recaps and analysis about what happens inside that courtroom. So make sure to download our streaming app, 12 Plus, on your Apple, Fire, or Roku, and you can watch it for free.